Hey crafty friends, this is Chelsea. If you've watched my channel for any length of time, then you know I love very detailed, layered projects with stitching, inking, mixed media, all that kind of good stuff. Well, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I have a dream of being a faster scrapbooker, and my friend Julie challenged me to make a layout with using only 5 things. Now, of course, I balked at this and negotiated, but I'm going to do my very best to see what I can come up with using limited supplies. To help me with this challenge, I'm using this sketch from the CDT 8.5 by 11 sketchbook. I mostly scrapbook 12 by 12, so I'll show you how I'm adapting the design to make it fit my style. I love how sketches really speed up my creative process, and it takes a lot of that basic design work out of it, so I can focus on making it look pretty and playing with embellishments. I went ahead and printed a bunch of pictures from our trip to Maui in 2022. These are all from the evening, basically watching the sunset, which is one of my favorite things to do in Hawaii. It's so beautiful. And as I was looking through all my pictures from this trip, I realized I hadn't actually documented any of the sunsets. And I thought all the orange in here would really go well with some of this Cape Cod paper that I want to use. All right, let's get going on this challenge. I have my 2 Versamats here. I love using these when I'm doing a layout, especially double page layout, having both of them. Really helpful to line things up and also for filming because it keeps it in camera. Otherwise, I'd be off screen probably half the time. So to get started, I need to make that diagonal piece. I am using a piece of the special paper that comes only in the workshop kit. So the Cape Cod Scrapbooking Workshop, there's some special papers that are only in there. I use a quilting ruler to cut this right from point to point with a knife. And then I cut a 6x6 piece of this stripe paper, which is actually also a specialty paper only available in the workshop kit, because I felt like I really liked that diagonal cut and I wanted to kind of reinforce it. And of course, it brings out the oranges that are in my photos. So I have definitely switched up the sketch a bit. I'm using a 4" by 10" photo, and then a bunch of 3x4s, and then a 4x6 over on the right-hand page there. Where I have the 4x10 on the left-hand side, it was supposed to be a 4x6 with a title above it, but I'm not going to really have a big title for this page just because it's going along with all my other Maui pages. I went ahead and matted all my photos with Toffee cardstock, a 1/4 inch larger than the photo, and then I also did a journaling spot, and I had to make it just a little bit narrow, a 1/4 of an inch narrower, so it's 4 inches instead of 4 1/4, just so it would match up with the photos underneath. Now I pulled in this wood grain paper from the April to June mix-ins, and then I also tried this paper here from Cape Cod. I was feeling like I needed to add more, and this is usually where I try and add more. I was thinking of adding stamping to the background, and then I was hearing Julie in my head, keep it simple. Right? I'm trying to become faster, so that means not adding as many layers and as much detail, but I did decide as I was going to start sticking everything down that I am going to rip my pieces. So I went ahead and ripped the long edge of all 4 of those triangles, and then I wanted to bring in another color. So there's a tiny bit of Lagoon that's on that striped piece. So I brought in some circles, 4 inches, 3 inches, and 2.5 inch circles. They're all cut from the Lagoon cardstock that came in the Cape Cod workshop kit, and I'm using the light side. These stamped images are from the Cape Cod Scrapbooking Stamp and Thin Cut set. I actually made them in my last Cape Cod layout video. I will link that down below for you. And you can see in there how I did the 2-tone coloring of the stamps. I used peach and nectarine ink, and I love these stamps so much, and it made it so much easier that I had these left over from that layout. I had debated stamping them in new colors, maybe using some bluebird ink, but I already had these done, so I just kept them the way they were. As I'm looking at these Lagoon circles, I like how they look, but I feel like they need just a little bit of texture to them, a little bit of some sort of pattern. Since I have so much white kind of empty space there, I wanted them to have something. So I'm just going to stamp them with this set, which is the Cape Cod Cardmaking set. I also plan on using those seashell dies because they are awesome. But this one is just kind of a really nice scratchy, distressed texture stamp, which I love. And I thought it would be an easy way to add some pattern to the cardstock. I'm stamping on the light side of the Lagoon cardstock. So Close to My Heart cardstock has a true color side and then a lighter version of the same color. It's really handy when you're working on projects. I love that flexibility. So I did it in second generation first, and then I'm thinking it looks maybe just a little bit too faint. So I decided to give it a try with like the full strength Lagoon ink without stamping off first. And I think I like that a little bit better. It's a little bit more contrast and it does stand out a little bit more, especially on camera. I chose to use circles because it really helps break up all of these straight lines. Like I have a lot of angles going on with those triangles, all the rectangles with my photos. It's just a lot of straight lines, and I love how the circles break that up, add a little bit of movement, and add another shape into the mix. And I also made them different sizes so that it's a little bit more interesting to look at rather than having the exact same sized element just repeated over and over again. I like having that variation in size. Cleaning off my stamp with my stamp Shammy, and then we're going to switch over to some die cutting. So I grabbed some more White Daisy cardstock, and I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do them, but after I had stamped those circles, I thought, hey, why don't I do this? I did second generation stamping with the Toffee ink using that same texture stamp, and then I'm just going to die cut out of that piece. So I'm going to see how many seashells I can fit on here and then just run that through my Big Shot. I'm going to add one to each of my clusters so that it's balanced. There's a different seashell but out of the same color. And then I grabbed some Periwinkle cardstock, which is also in the workshop kit. I'm going to stamp it with first generation Periwinkle ink so you get that nice tone-on-tone look just like I did on the circles, and then die cut some more seashells out of there. I wasn't sure which ones I wanted, so I just die cut them all, and I can always save extras for another layout. So I'm going to tuck one of those into each of my clusters as well, and then I want to work on my journaling piece. I'm using this summer stamp set, and I want to use that stamp that says happy with the sunset. I also thought about using this leaf here. I am going to stamp it out and see if it will work with my layout. I'm conditioning the stamps just by rubbing over them to remove the manufacturing residue that's on there. This happy works perfectly on that little journaling spot. Just debating if I should stamp it at the top or the bottom. I grabbed some avocado ink and I'm just going to stamp out some of these leaves and see if they're going to work. I don't end up using them because it just didn't really go. I have some green in a couple of my photos, which actually the tone matches pretty good. You can see right there the greenery in that photo. It matches pretty good. It's that yellowy green, but I just didn't like the way it looked with the seashells and everything. It seemed kind of odd. I felt like I needed to add flowers or something. So I'm bringing in my stamp platform because I want to selectively ink up this image, and I'm going to need to stamp it a few times in order to do that. Just because we're trying to, make things quicker and simplify it by just working with fewer supplies doesn't mean we can't do cool techniques. So I grabbed my sponge daubers, my little fingertip sponge daubers, and I'm wiping off any ink that kind of gets where I don't want it to. If I would have had a Q-tip handy, that would have worked really good to clean it off. But I basically stamped that little sunshine on there in Nectarine, which is the orange color. And I'm just using my stamp chamois to clean in between each stamping so that I don't end up with ink where I don't want it. I switched daubers and now I grab the avocado ink and I'm just adding it onto the trees here. It was a little tricky to get ink exactly where I wanted it, but I wasn't going for a perfect image. I was totally fine if some color got on other areas and it ended up being a little bit blendy and a little bit bleeding over. I think the only way to get it like 100% crisp, if that's what you want, is to either mask it off or you could also color it with markers or something like that. I also debated just like stamping it in black or maybe white heat embossing it and then ink blending over the top. But I haven't done this technique in a long time, and so I thought this would be fun. Now I'm applying Periwinkle ink. I'm doing part of the sky and the water and the top of the word happy. I wanted to do like a two-tone look on that word happy, and I decided to go back and add a second coat of the Periwinkle ink. So I cleaned off what I had, and then I'm just going back in. And I should note, like, the stamp chamois doesn't make things like super wet, but there is a little bit of water on your stamp after you use it. And so I just wipe it off with my hand to make sure I don't have like splotches of water. Now I went in with Lagoon ink to finish off the word happy and give me that kind of fun two-tone look. And of course, the very last stamping I did, I got a little bit of ink on the inside of the H. So how I ended up cleaning that up was just scraping it off with the point of my scissors and then adding a little white gel pen over top to correct it. I went ahead and did my journaling. I used this teal Le Pen. I love how that turned out. Got my story on there of watching the sunsets and sitting on the beach having our supper while the sun went down. And so that part is all done. And now I want to add some more embellishments. So these brown pieces that you can see on here are actually from the embellishment pack that goes with Cape Cod. They're like a very thin paperboard or thin chipboard. And I realized my words needed some backing so they would actually show up. So this says the beach is calling, and I used that leftover scrap that I had stamped and just put glue on the back and then cut it out with my scissors so that it stands out, but it's not like stark white either. And now I'm just going to start sticking everything down. I'm not going to show you the whole process because basically everything is laid out where it's going so you can kind of see where it's going to go. But I'm making sure to stick down my circles first and then stick down my photos. You could also just not put adhesive in that corner if that's easier for you, but you want to make sure that there's room to get those layers underneath. And I'm just trying to line up my photos. They're about 1 inch up from the bottom. And I'll try and do the same on the left-hand page so they're about the same height at the bottom, even though they're not the same height at the top. I'm putting this little signpost embellishment on here. I wanted to make sure that the bottom was going to be hidden by the seashells. So it took me a minute just kind of figure out where everything was going and make sure that was going to be covered. And I decided to pop dot all 3 of the pieces with the words on it. So the post is down flat just with some tape runner. And then I'm going to use foam tape on all the other 3 pieces. The other seashells and everything in this little cluster are going to be flat, and then the seahorse I'm also going to put up on foam tape. Now at this point, it was a little tough for me to stop because, I really wanted to add more. I wanted to have more clustering, more embellishments, but I decided to keep it simple. There's some white paperboard in the embellishment pack, and I just pulled these seagulls out of there to add a little bit of detail. I like having them overlapping that top photo so they're really a part of this whole grouping. But I drew the line and decided not to add any more embellishments to this page and stick with just the 3 main clusters of embellishments. And I am happy with how that turned out. Off camera, I stuck down the left-hand side. Everything is flat except for that crab. That one is pop dotted, but everything else on there is flat. Now, I needed something. I love adding some sort of gem or splatter or something to my clusters. I didn't do any stamping on that white, which is also hard for me, but I decided to bring in some sequins, and these are the Melon sequins. Melon is the color of the year this year, and it is retiring. It will be going away as of the end of August. So if you want any of the embellishments and things that coordinate with it, you'll want to grab them before then. I also have been using the Melon pearls a lot with this Cape Cod paper, which look gorgeous too. When I'm adding sequins and gems, I usually put them in clusters of 2 or 3, or sometimes a cluster of 2, and then 1 as kind of the third point to that little triangle. It's really whatever appeals to you. But I like to place them all first, kind of take a step back, look at it, see if I like it, and then I will go in after that and start adding glue to them. Now my favorite way to glue these down is to use my little pickup tool, the Close to My Heart pickup tool, pick it up, add a little dot of glue, put it down, and then I just lightly lay them onto the glue. Because there's a hole in the middle, the glue can kind of ooze up through there. So then I use the back side of my glue bottle to push them down into the glue. So they're kind of sitting up high on that puddle of glue, and then I use the back side to just kind of push them down in there. And that way they're nice and secure and they're not going anywhere. And that is the finished layout. I would love to hear down in the comments what you guys think. Did I achieve my goal? I think it was a good exercise for me and something I should do more of, because what matters in the end are my pictures are scrapbooked, my story is documented, and I had fun doing it. It was fun. I had to rein myself in a little bit, but it was a good process. Now, if you're not done yet and you want to see more, check out my playlist here with some of my process videos, and subscribe if you're not already. I will see you next time. Bye.